think we're ready.
All right. I'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for coming out, and I want to thank Bill for putting this together, and whoever and everyone else that was involved. He's been my contact. I'm sure there's a lot of effort that went into this. I know I've worked on the bill with Bill for the last couple sessions. First session we weren't able to get a hearing for it. The next session I chaired my own committee, and we were able to get the bill assigned to my committee and got a very informative hearing on the bill. We had a professor from ASU come down and give a presentation on cost accounting and the effectiveness of cost accounting in the private sector, and how we heard some examples of John Deere and some other businesses that were able to use cost accounting to make better decisions about whether they should be making or buying a product that they use in their supply chain, and government certainly could benefit from this as well. There are countless areas where government is competing with the private sector, where we are essentially making or providing a service that we could be buying at a cheaper rate. And so Bill's been very, very informative in his experience on what board was it?
The Private Enterprise Review Board.
Private Enterprise Review Board, where they're looking at exactly this question. Is the government inappropriately competing with the private sector? And so I've been very interested in this idea. I'm excited to hear this presentation that you all have put together. I want to thank everyone that came out. David Farnsworth, and who's recently appointed senator in District 16, and
Gabrielle Giffords.
And you're a candidate, right? And for Congress in which district?
3?
Congressional District 3. So that's who's the current?
Raul Grijalva.
Raul Grijalva. Okay. And remind me your name one more time.
Gabriela Saucedo Mercer.
Okay. Gabriela Mercer. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for being here as well. And I assume that everyone else are private citizens involved in Tracy's organization and the school where you're learning. Is that? Am I characterizing it incorrectly?
It's not mine.
It's not your organization, but you're very involved in it. Right?
Well, we're really a group of small business people, accountants, lawyers, contractors, and so forth.
Just
Excellent.
concerned about government issues that could be very beneficial to the taxpayer and also to the legislators.
Excellent.
Because they're going to have much more access to information and be able to make much better decisions.
Absolutely. Well, let's go.
With your next bill too.
Thank you so much. Let's go around the room and get everyone's names so we're a little bit more familiar with everybody. And start off, my name's Representative Justin Olson. I represent District 25, so that's kind of the bulk of Mesa between Gilbert and Power Road, and then the north half of Mesa outside of those boundaries. And we'll just go around the room and let us know who you are.
I'm Dawn Holmes.
Dan Holmes.
Jose Guadajero.
Gabriela Saucedo Mercer, and before I'm a candidate, I am also a student of this class.
Excellent.
Bob Stanner, student.
Terry Johnson. Tracy Langston, I'm also in LD 25, so thank you so much for setting this up for us.
Danny Ray, I'm also in LD 25.
Ralph Hines for 9, LD 18.
And Ann Hines.
I'm Bill Sandry, and you're?
I'm Sparky Smith, and I'm in LD 28.
I believe our backgrounds, our bios are here, the presenter.
Yeah, you should have our bios.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bill if you want to turn it over to whoever you should turn it over to.
Terry's going to start us off.
Start off. We're here as Arizona citizens with varied backgrounds, as Ann mentioned, concerned about the level of fiscal transparency in Arizona government. Among us, we have small business owners, legal and real estate professionals, military veterans, former and current general contractors, and an MBA in accounting. We have a combined 20 years of experience in corporate budget and financial analysis, 6 years on a legislative appointed citizen committee, and over 200 combined years of personal experience in balancing a budget. Like you, we are husbands and wives, fathers and mothers working to keep our families on budget, investing and saving for the future. Like you, we have a vested interest in Arizona, and we want to see our state succeed for ourselves and for our families. So we thank you for allowing us to show you what we've discovered during our investigation and research into fiscal transparency. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today. So I want to do a short illustration about why this is important to us and as well as legislators. So imagine that your family has found itself in a situation where your mom has is unable to do her grocery shopping for herself. She's reached that stage, and so what you do is you hire somebody. You hire a caregiver, a hired caregiver, who will go out and purchase the groceries for her. So, this goes on for a few weeks, things are working out fine, and then the caregiver calls you and she says, I just don't have enough money to get the groceries for your mom, I need you to send me more money. So you do that, you take money out of your household budget for a while and help her with that, and then eventually you realize the situation isn't going to work out, it's putting a strain on your household finances, and you know that if you did a little bit more investigation, you might be able to find a solution to this problem where your mom could meet her expenses herself. And so instead of viewing the caregiver as an adversary, she came highly recommended, and you want to work together with her as a team. So you talk to her and you get some receipts, right? You would look and see what she's spending the money on. So when you get a receipt, this is the type of a purchase that she's making for a week's worth of groceries. It's great food, healthy food, and the total is about $50. Well, your mom only has $30 a week to spend on groceries. So you sit down with her and help her make some plans, make some reductions, and figure out a better way to do this, a better way to use your mom's money economically and still fulfill the responsibility that you have for her. And so you're able to come up with a grocery list, very similar, not exactly the same, maybe not perfect, but it works. It's completely workable, healthy food for your mom, and the total there is a little under $27. And so you're able to save all that money, plus have a little bit go back to your mom. So in this situation, your responsibility to your mother is very similar to a legislator's responsibility to the taxpayers. You have you have a stewardship over the money. And when there is excess money, you need to be able to look at the receipts and see when more money is needed, you need to be able to look at the receipts, see what's really going on, understand the exact cost of things so that you can work with the departments in the state to reduce those costs and to find out how the money can be spent responsibly and economically. And so with this, we are presenting an accounting system that would help you fulfill that responsibility to the taxpayers just as you would want to fulfill your responsibility to your mother.
Excuse me. I might just add something to that. You guys don't get an itemized seat in the legislature. Thank you for being here, everybody. My name is Bill Sandry. I served for 6 years on the Private Enterprise Review Board. That was a board that was created by the legislature that was comprised of private citizens to hear complaints by small businesses for unfair competition with the state agencies against private businesses. And in that 6 years, not one state agency could ever give us that itemized receipt. They could never tell us what their costs were. They always had this budget process, and that's all that wherever all the money went. But every small business that appeared could tell us exactly what their costs were. They knew because they have to report that. When they bid on a government contract, they have to use a unit cost accounting system in order to explain where the money goes. And when we would ask the state agencies, why do you require that kind of accounting system when you use the budget system? They would say, because that's the only way we can hold them accountable. We need to know where the money goes. And so that's why we make them do that. So anyway, over those 6 years, that's a synopsis of how all those hearings went. And I'll give you just a couple examples that I recall from those 6 years. One was a project that was to bid out for cabinets to be built and installed in a charter school system. And they had I think it was in Glendale, and 3 small business cabinet makers came to complain that there was unfair competition in the bid. The Department of Corrections got the bid. They came in and told us their cost, and they said, they gave us the data, the accounting information. The bid was given to the Department of Corrections for less than the cost of the materials to build the cabinets. I mean, that means, first of all, that other money that is gonna be required to make those cabinets is coming out of our tax dollars somewhere else. So, you know, we're not getting, without that kind of accounting process, we don't know what the Department of Corrections really spent on it. It was built into their budget. And secondly, we have all of these honest tax-paying citizens that are being put out of work, and if they got that bid, that's more taxes back to the state. So we were deprived of that as well. And I mean, that's just one example. Another one is Social Security services. There was a gentleman, a small businessman that came up from Tucson. He provided all the Social Security services that are available to our citizens in this state for free. And when he did that work, the federal government reimbursed him 100%. So there's no cost to the state and no cost to our citizens. He could tell us what his costs were done to the dime on every service he provided. Department of Economic Services, DES, set up a department with 60 employees to compete with him, advertise against him, and to try to provide those same services. And for those services that they provided, we only got reimbursed 75%. So the state had to chip in another 25%. If a small business did it, we wouldn't have to pay anything. The state would, as a taxpayer. Nonetheless, they had that department and they were competing with him, trying to put him out of business. And the Department of DES did not know their costs for any of the services they provided. They couldn't, so we don't even know what we were getting 25% off, or having to pay 25% off. We couldn't trace those things down. I've got other examples. UMass Seed Lab, Environmental Vegetation Services, traffic light installation, and I could go on. I got a box full of them from my notes. But that's the essence of why we need to have a unit cost or a transparency accounting basis instead of this budget process to help the legislators determine where our money is coming from and where it goes. Thank you.
No, I just, okay.
In the mid-1990s, a Republican prosecutor, Stephen Goldsmith, became elected the mayor of the city of Indianapolis. And he had campaigned under the Reagan philosophy that less government is better government. And he said, if you elect me, I'm going to privatize many city services because the private sector can do it more efficiently than the public sector. And he was elected, and unlike most politicians, he actually was going to deliver on his campaign promises. And so, but just before he was about to put up some contracts for bid, he thought he better be able to demonstrate to the city's citizens and the labor unions that there's really going to be a demonstrable savings. So he asked his department heads, can you tell me what it costs us today to fix potholes, or to repave a mile of road, or to pick up a ton of trash? They said, well, we don't know, but we'll look and we'll come back and tell you. And they came back in a few days and they said, Mayor, we have bad news. We have no idea. Now, I wrote a case about this, and when I teach the case, I hand out the budget document for the city of Indianapolis at that time period, and it's about the size of its phone book. I mean, it has hundreds of pages and hundreds of numbers on each page, and yet, despite that, there was nothing in the budget document that told anybody what things cost, told them what they spent. Well, the mayor said, well, this is not a good basis for moving forward with privatization. He said, we have to find out what it's going to cost us, what it costs us today. And so they did a study, used activity-based costing, and they started with filling potholes, and they learned after about 6 weeks of the study that it cost about $435 per ton of asphalt to fix a pothole. So he said, all right, now we're ready to bid it out. But the union head came up to the mayor and said, sir, he said, what? And he says, well, we'd like to bid too. And he said, well, I guess we got your bid. It's costing you $435 a ton. If the private sector does it cheaper, we're going to let them do it. He says, well, give us a chance. We'd like to do it better. And he said, well, how long have you been filling potholes? 20 or 30 years? What's going to happen in the next 6 weeks that's going to make a difference? He said, well, there's two things that have changed. First, we've never seen this information before. So we never saw all the elements that go into the cost of doing this road repair work. And second, didn't matter before because we had a job. Now it really matters, and we think we can do better. So I said, okay, 6 weeks. And in 6 weeks, through a whole series of changes in the way they filled the potholes, less staffing, getting rid of supervisors, a lot of process improvements, they drove the cost down 35%. And in fact, when they subsequently did put it out to bid, they were the lowest cost supplier. So they retained the contract. And Mayor Goldsmith told me, he said, I learned it's not about privatization, it's about competition. That the workers in the public sector can be as efficient or more efficient than those in the private sector, but you need two critical components. You need information. They had to know what it cost and all the elements that went in the cost. And you needed to have some incentives. They had to have something at stake, some skin in the game, so they were motivated to improve. But once we provide them with valid cost information and the incentives to do better, they did a terrific job. And they didn't win every contract, but they actually won quite a few contracts by making these process improvements. And the citizens were better off, and the workers were better off. They felt much better about their jobs. And sometimes they came in even with more savings, and he shared that with them. He gave them $1,000 checks in very public TV appearances to say thank you for making process improvements and doing your job better for the citizens of the city.
I was gonna get up here and I was gonna sing and dance, but I had my ACL replaced a month ago, so there won't be any dancing, and I'm not a very good singer, so you're gonna have to bear with me. As he talked about Indianapolis, there was a key there. There was information. And basically, you might be asking yourself, what are we doing here today? What is the purpose of today? Today we're here to ask you to support a bill that would give us the full fiscal transparency that here in Arizona we need. Representative Olson sponsored a bill last session. It was HB 2520. It didn't make it, but it was a very concise bill. And I'm going to read a little bit of it, and it says, we need you to support a bill like this. It would require each state agency, excluding the university system, to report expenditures by major product and service categories as part of their annual budget request submitted to the legislature. These categories would then be displayed as the agency's cost per unit of product or service provided. If agencies do not comply, their funding would be reduced by 10% for the previous fiscal year. From the previous fiscal year amount. The benefits of this system, number one is information, knowledge. You can't truly make an informed decision without any information. So for myself, as being a citizen, one time I thought, well, I want to know how much the state of Arizona is spending on this, or I want to know how much the city of Mesa is spending on this. So I went there and I looked at, say, road improvement, and it had some huge number that has more numbers in it than I could even comprehend. And I was like, okay, so they're spending, this is just a made-up number, they're spending $5 billion on roads. Where's it going? And I, as an individual, I couldn't find where it was going. And I'm in construction, so, I was wondering, okay, so how much is the asphalt costing? How much are they paying to get it compacted? How much is the striping? How much is, the barricades? How much is all these different aspects of the project? And nowhere could I find that. And if I can't find it, I would hope that the legislators can find it, but I don't think you guys even have that information. And so how, as our elected representatives, can you truly make an informed decision? So this information will be very beneficial to you in giving you that information so you could say, this is a little bit more than what we really want to, we want to commit to this. Or this is a great deal, let's do it. Let's do it twice, it's great. And like they did in Indianapolis, they found where there was savings everywhere if there was just information to compare it to. If they could compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So one of the biggest things is being able to be accountable and to have that knowledge and to hold others accountable who are, per se, doing the work or providing the service. Another thing is problem solving. Ann Kinney, who is the director of budget, the budget office for the city of Milwaukee, said there is pressure on virtually all governments to cut costs and hold the line or even cut taxes. To do this in the best way, you have to develop good cost information. Otherwise, you might just decide to cut services rather than figure out a way to deliver those services more effectively. So it can help you solve problems, help you to know where you're able to make cuts or changes, or even to reappropriate money. I'm a big cut taxes guy because I don't like paying taxes, because that's just money that's coming away from my family. So, you have a group of people that are cut taxes. You have a group of people that are more money for education, more money for public services. If you could take that budget and kind of dissect it and see where there's waste, you could take that money and reallocate it to these different services and not have to raise the taxes, not have to go back to the people and say, hey, you know, we took $100 last month, we need another 100. It'd be a win-win for everybody. All groups would be like, hey, they raised education funding and they didn't raise taxes? Wait, what's going on here? It'd be a whole new concept for people to deal with. It'd probably blow people's minds. The simplicity of the bill, as I was reading your bill, Representative Olson, I think I read it in like 30 seconds or something, and I could actually understand it. You know, it wasn't a bill that I had to call a lawyer or get a legal dictionary to be right there as I read it and look up every other word to try to understand what's going on. So the simplicity of it, I think, is something that's a great benefit to not only the legislators, but to the citizens. You know, as a citizen myself, I can understand it. And it didn't take me 6 months to read, you know. And so the simplicity is a great thing also. It also appeals, fiscal responsibility appeals to a broad group. In 2011, Gallup performed a poll that they questioned people on how much money they thought was being wasted.
I can read these numbers off for you. This is in the state. These are the Democrats, Independents, Republicans, Liberals, Moderates, Conservatives, 18 to 29 years, 30 to 49 years, 50 to 64, 65 plus. High
school or less education?
Yeah, high school, some college graduates only, and postgraduate. And this is what what their opinion was of the amount of waste. 42%, 43%, 39%, 38, 44, all the way down in the 40s and high 30s as to what their opinion was that the government was wasting. And that was the state government. On the local government, it's the same numbers basically, maybe a little higher. They think that the local wastes a little less money than the federal or than the state.
So basically,
you just can't read it. Yeah.
If you look at this, I'm not sure, is this in their packet?
The link is.
There's a link to the website for this. But if you look at this one in particular, Democrats, we'll say Democrats and Republicans, because we kind of put those on opposite ends of the spectrum when we're talking. You have Democrats think that 42 cents is being wasted per dollar at the state level. Republicans think 39 cents is being wasted per dollar at the state level. So that's, 3-point swing right there, a gap right there of 3 points, when you would think that they would be like on opposite ends. Like, Republicans would think it was 100 cents on a dollar, or Democrats would think it was 10. And so as you go down, it's not more than a 5-cent gap on how they feel money's being spent. And whether it is truly 42 cents or 39 cents or whatever, we don't know. But this is their perception and their opinion as to what's being wasted. And so this is an issue that appeals to everybody. Everybody wants fiscal responsibility. Everybody knows that you have to have fiscal responsibility because we all run households. Most of us run businesses or work for businesses. Even if you don't run a business, but you work for a business, if they just go and they're spending more money than what they make, business isn't going to be around very long, and your job's not going to be around very long. So it's a very big issue that appeals to everybody. Everybody is concerned about this. And so the benefit is, as you work, if you support a bill that is pushing for fiscal responsibility, people will see that and they'll say, man, this guy, he actually, he's realistic. He's not, on some mountain up high looking down on us little people who are trying to balance our budgets. He actually wants to do that. Another benefit as legislators we are actively engaged citizens. And we have a network of actively engaged citizens throughout the state. And we're here to help you to move bills like this forward, to get them through, to show up when needs be, to provide expert witnesses, to email our legislators, whatever is needed, we're here to help. Because things like this help us drastically. I'm a father of 6 kids. Every every dollar I can save is a dollar that they can spend, I guess. You know, that's maybe a bad way to put it, but that's what it seems like. Every dollar I save is a dollar they can spend. But it's something that, as citizens, there's a lot of citizen involvement, particularly for an issue such as this. So we're here asking for your support to move a bill forward with our help. Thank you.
Hi, we're here to support you, Representative Olson. We know it's difficult for you. We're gonna talk about the objections that you hear and our responses to that. We're gonna be your support team, both of you, if you, Senator Farnsworth, if you help us too. We'll be your research team, whatever you need, we will be there to help you. And so one of the major objections from the governor regarding your bill was that the cost of the bill is prohibitively expensive, but they didn't know what the cost is. They couldn't define the cost, so how could they say that? Now we know in Indianapolis they say 500 million, almost probably close to $1 billion if you take it in current year's terms. They could, Pete Marek Mitchell, and I know you're a CP, I forgot what it's now KPMG or whatever. I'm still Pete Marek Mitchell. They're professionals in this. That's all they do is ABC accounting for public sectors. You can hire a lot.
How much do they charge? No, you said it was
I know,
it was $1 million. They
I
spent.
said, let's say it would cost $1 million for consultants to come in, and yet you're saving $1 billion. I think they can afford $1 million. And Bill even offered, because he had heard the objection, the software to it was too expensive, he even offered to pay for the software. So the cost is not the issue to implement. The savings alone from duplication. So the next one is government agencies don't have the necessary software.
But that just isn't true, because the software is available throughout the industry for private industry. And as a matter of fact, the state of Iowa implemented this in their accounting, and what they wrote a government report, which is the ABCs of how to do this. So there's already a report out there that tells the state exactly what to do step by step in order to do this. The country of Australia uses the activity-based costing. Parts of the government in England use it. It's used in Texas, in Del Rio, Brownsville, and Laredo.
The Marines, US Marines,
the Marines
it's
use
required.
it. The military uses it.
The
so
EPA requires it.
And many of the European countries are now beginning to implement this kind of cost accounting as well. So it's not true that the software isn't there. But the additional thing about it is it's not going to be another Obamacare, because the software is already there. It's not going to be a big snafu. It's going to be just slip it into place.
So the next objection is it will place a big burden on our employees. I am the one that has the MBA in accounting and finance, and 30 years in budgeting and long-range planning and so forth. And now Ralph and I own our own real estate company, just like Senator Farnsworth. And Ralph is an ex-general contractor. I can tell you, when I worked at Stanford Research, it was like a law firm. I did analysis, researching certain subjects and budget analyzing for them. If I even went to lunch, I had to bill a client. So Boeing would say, gee, Ann, I love your work, but don't you think, did you go to Starbucks or something? Why was there so much charge today? So listen, we learned to budget really, really well, and I can tell you, you don't go to Starbucks for an hour to talk to somebody, because you have to put that down on your notes. So we don't think it will be a burden. All private contractors have to bid in this fashion.
Every law office has to do the same thing. Everybody who works in that office has to allocate the overhead, and they have to allocate the resources, and they have to allocate their own time to each client individually. And so they can bill out 24 hours a day.
We don't know, but we think because the state requires private contractors to provide this, they might even have their own accounting system, so they can plug that information into their systems to analyze the different bids. So they may even have the software and the know-how anyway. So no place to account for overhead costs like copying machines, what I was talking about. You can't go to Starbucks and so forth. you can do this. Generally, the industry standard is like 27%. You're allowed 27% G&A, general administrative cost overhead, but the rest of it has to be defined for an activity. So this is standard in corporations, standard in the public sector. And a veiled attempt to privatize.
Well, actually, it's a zero-sum situation, because if there is a job which the state loses, or the government loses, that goes to the private sector, and so there's no jobs lost on either side. It actually works out that the odds are stacked in favor of the government contractors, because the private contractor is burdened with the taxes to have to put into their overhead, whereas the state and the government don't have to put that in. So they already start with an advantage of maybe 15 to 20% over a private contractor. So it's easier for them to get those. So privatization should not be too much of an issue. And you saw in the video that we saw that once they are aware that they have the potential for doing this competition, they get much more efficient, and they want to know what their costs are, because they want to compete and they want to save their jobs.
So, Gary?
Thank you very much. So it's a win-win. It's the right thing to do, and we want to help you do it. Between research, going out and getting the answers, some of which we have here, some other ones are in the handout, some of them we don't have yet and we need to go find, to working in your districts, informing the discretion of your constituents so that they can see the benefit of this and not be afraid of it. So we're here to help you, and we're looking for feedback from you also. So if you have specific questions about our presentation, things that we haven't answered and you want to ask, we're here to answer questions. Bill is a wealth of knowledge with his boxes of documentation, and so he's here for that too. So thank you very much for entertaining us.
For your time.
I have a question of a different nature. Why did film committee?
That's an excellent question. I actually was just going to touch on that. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for the excellent presentation. I mean, this is some excellent material that we can definitely use, in committee when we hear the bill, and
We're also prepared to do this to any
I think that
group
would be great.
that you want, or individual. We'll do the same thing for you.
That's fine, yeah. And so I mean, that was excellent. The Harvard Business School professor presentation on the Indianapolis cost accounting and the savings that they generated is perfect. I mean, just like you described, the governor's staff gave a memo to our joint legislative budget committee that said that the cost of this bill would be prohibitively expensive, like you mentioned, and really when you look at it, I mean the cost of not doing it is too much, is too great, and that's what we're missing out on, is all of these savings. I mean, for this city, who certainly, while Indianapolis is not a small city, it's certainly not the size of the state of Arizona. Saved $550 million over 10 years. The amount that we could save is substantial as a state. I look at CPS, where we have seen some real problems of management over the last few years, and we've thrown money at it and not seen what benefit we've received from that expenditure of resources. And so I think that this is exactly what we needed. But to get specifically to your question, the bill was assigned both to my committee as well as the Appropriations Committee, and Representative Kavanaugh chose not to hear the bill because of the governor's opposition to the bill. As I spoke with Bill Sandry about kind of strategy, the governor has opposed any attempts to by the legislature to increase the legislative authority over managing the accounting of the funds that are being spent. Right now, the legislature only appropriates, I believe it's less than half of the funds that the state is spending, because the legislature has no authority over the appropriation of the funds that we receive from the federal government, such as the 2-to-1 match that we receive for Medicaid and federal dollars to state tax dollars, all of the education grants and all of the federal funds that come for education, for Title IX, Title IV, and so on, and the list goes on. And so there's a substantial amount of funds that we don't even appropriate. But not only do we not appropriate them, we don't even know where they're being spent.
This is one of the advantages to this system is
Exactly.
that once you know the base cost that's actually being paid by the state, anything that's in surplus over that, has to come from the federal government. So indirectly, you uncover those costs by saying, oh, there's more money being spent, we don't have it, that's got to come from the federal government.
Well, exactly, and that's exactly what I was getting at. Is that so the first year I was down here, I ran a bill that had been run many times previously, prior by many individuals. Governor Brewer supported the bill when she was in the legislature. Someone before I was elected ran the bill after she got to the ninth floor, thinking, well, perhaps now we'll get this bill passed. She supported it when she was in the legislature. She vetoed it as the governor. And this bill is the legislative appropriation of the federal funds. So giving that authority, that oversight to the legislature in conjunction with the governor, just like we do with our state funds, to spend those federal dollars within the restrictions that are placed on them by the federal government, and the governor vetoed that. Unfortunately, we had a veto-proof majority of Republican legislators for the first time in quite some time. So when I was elected, I ran that and articulated that this may be the one opportunity that we have to pass this. It's always been a partisan issue. The Democrats, have seen that they rarely have control of the legislature. They've had control of the governor's office a few times, so they prefer to leave that balance of power where it is. So it's been a partisan issue. We had 2/3 majority of Republicans, and I ran the bill hoping that we could hold together as Republicans and override the governor's veto. But unfortunately, we didn't have the will to do that.
We did not have a supermajority of conservatives.
Oh,
Only people with
exactly.
hearts in front of it.
And that's exactly what happened, why that fell. But just let me finish this thought real quick, and then I'll wrap up on that. So the point that I'm making is that was a relative to this reform, a relatively minor shift of accounting oversight from the governor's office to the legislature's office, or to being shared with the legislature and the governor, and she didn't support that. This is going even further, which is needed and should be done. But I think that Representative Kavanaugh is absolutely correct that there's no way the governor's going to sign it. So the only way that it would be implemented under this governor is if we were to override your veto, and that's not likely to happen. So that's why Representative Kavanaugh chose not to hear it, just viewing it as not moving the ball forward, but just doing poking a
Why would
finger
this
in the
be a
governor's eye.
partisan issue? I would think the Democrats would be just as much in favor of it as the Republicans.
You would think, but
Yeah.
unfortunately they have not been. They opposed the bill in committee last year, and largely their opposition was they described concerns about what was it that they brought up. Union wages, say that the unions are paying livable wages, and I said, well, yeah, that's the problem. they're paying more than the market rate, and we should be paying market rates. It's not appropriate for the government to be taxing each of us to then redistribute that wealth to someone else. If it's a market rate, then we should be paying the market.
I don't think that's going
Exhausted
to fly with them. I
implementation.
think that what he said, where the union sees that they become competitive and they don't lose jobs, is a much more powerful argument.
Well, I think that in that circumstance, the union recognized that this was coming, and they wanted a chance to hold some of the jobs, because I think that they did lose some jobs. He talked about how they got rid of some supervisors, and so they had those savings, but they were able to maintain some of their jobs by going along with the program and obtaining those savings. But that really, I think, is the and this is a point that I made to Bill, gets me to really what I think should be the end game or the end goal with this, and that is to get the support of a governor, whoever that may be. I don't think it's going to happen with Governor Brewer, but we will have a new governor in a year, and if you all and us as legislators can make the case to the gubernatorial candidates for why this is something that they ought to be running on. Just like the mayor of Indianapolis. They ought to be running, everybody, like you said, everybody supports gaining efficiency in government. So this can be a campaign issue. Everybody runs on cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse. This is a way that you can actually do that. And so I hope that we can make this pitch to Doug Ducey, to everyone else, the gal from GoDaddy, I forget her name, Jones, Ken Bennett, Christine Jones, and if we can get the support of the administration, then it's going to be effective. Because even if we were to pass this and an administration tacitly supported it and signed it, then the reliability of the data that we get back from the administration is going to be suspect. So it's really going to be most powerful if we do have full support from the administration. So I think you had another thought, and then we'll go over to.
Well, that was you almost answered my next question, which was what's going to be different this session that would make this bill viable, and apparently from your answer is that nothing, that we have to wait until the governor changes.
There's one thing that would make it a little different. This bill will become effective after the governor leaves office.
Sure.
So it could still be a legacy bill for her for transparency and accounting, but she doesn't have to suffer any of the accounting requirements to be accountable.
That's important.
Yeah, and that's just a possibility. But
And I think that we can advance the effort by having a bill this session. Hopefully, perhaps I can convince the leadership to assign it only to my committee, so we can get a vote on the House floor, get it over to the Senate. And maybe even if we get it up to the governor and get it vetoed, but at the same time, talk with these gubernatorial candidates and start building support for perhaps making this a campaign issue for any of them. Then that could advance the likelihood of success.
You mentioned several names of people that we might want to get in contact with. Is there anyone that you might recommend to us who could kind of set that up so we could do that?
I would just reach out to their campaigns. If you go onto their campaign websites and see, I don't know.
No, I'm thinking about people who are currently in the government that you would be beneficial for us to talk to. And if we don't have those contacts, is there somebody who can contact us and set up appointments for us?
You could certainly contact Representative Kavanaugh's office. I think he's pretty familiar with the bill. Like I said, we've talked to him the last 2 years. But you could advocate if it gets assigned to a PROPS. Just contact him and urge him to hear the bill.
he made a promise in a meeting 2 years ago this summer that if we had a presentation, he would organize a meeting for that with the governor's office and JLBC, and I think some people from the legislature, maybe a state agency rep. Maybe we can hold him to that promise.
You had a thought?
I'm on the City of Phoenix Innovations and Efficiency Task Force.
Okay.
And we don't have that, but I can see it's coming because they're actively analyzing the back and forth between what they brought a few things back in-house, and they're taking more and more things out-house. But, and of course, they got the zero budgeting, and so this is the next step, and I will assure you that'll get presented.
Well, that's good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, you've got some.
My question is, it sounds like the problem is jobs, concern over the government, your friends' jobs, etc. Is there ever been a thought of making some exemptions, like police, firemen, universities?
Certainly, yeah, and Bill and I have talked about that.
Just to be able to get their concept in the general governmental grant, and then eventually see the benefits.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that. Perhaps rolling it out on a pilot program basis. Maybe just targeting one agency. One idea I've talked about with some of the staffers here is, I mentioned CPS. We are giving a lot of. We've given a substantial increase in resources to CPS, and I think that does give us some leverage. I know the governor's going to be coming back asking for more this session as well. That perhaps we advocate for
6,000
this.
cases where they just basically throw them in the trash can.
Right. So perhaps we can make this use some leverage there, saying we'll support given this appropriation, but we need some accountability, and this is what we expect.
But like in the City of Phoenix, they went to great length to allocate the people that were being placed on 2 different departments that they shut down. And they went to great lengths to incorporate that and retrain people. So, and when you have a union situation, that's really not that big of a threat for the most part.
Right, and I was going to say that I think that you're right that the Democrats oppose it because of that concern about their supporters in government losing their jobs. When it comes to the Republican support, I think that the governor's support, I think that the concern is more just about its turf wars. You know, right now the governor, I mean, for all we know, the governor may already be doing this analysis. I don't think that she is. I don't think that her office is, but it is entirely possible that had they done this analysis, that they don't want to share it with the legislature because of that turf war. That gives us more information about how we want to appropriate. Whereas, you know, if the governor, if the administration has an advantage in information, then it's easier for them to ask for what they want and hope to get it. Whereas if they don't have that asymmetrical information, then you know they lose that advantage. So that's where I think that the real hurdle is that fight with the administrative arm of government, but and that's why I say I think we need to get support of a governor that then can implement it, you know, as their idea, as their initiative, and that's when I think you're going to get the most bang out of the program because it takes that daily administration to be able to oversee what's actually going on, or you end up with the agencies playing with the numbers, shifting overhead to the programs where they, you know, maybe they're popular programs, so they shift overhead over there and take it away from where it's actually being spent in order to protect the programs that they want to protect. And that's why I think that it really takes the support of the governor. But hopefully we can get that.
Would there be any advantage to us to be meeting with the union leaders and answer their questions before they start to object?
You know, I think until we have the support of the governor, I think getting the support of the ninth floor is the first step.
Well, I think you've already painted your window of opportunity, and that's tying it to the CPS thing because
right.
So we might need to get Miss Laurie Roberts this information.
So whatever way you think we could be helpful to you,
Okay.
if we need to talk to Kavanaugh or whatever, or
Absolutely.
don't you have to lay the foundation?
Mm-hmm.
As we've studied the legislature and so forth, Mr. Jose's been so active for us. And Bill, it seems like you have to keep presenting bills
Right.
for quite a few years.
Exactly.
The knowledge gets wider and wider because it becomes acceptable.
That's exactly right.
And so we may not make it this time, but
right.
the next
But you
governor.
keep advancing the effort.
So whatever we can do and whoever we can talk to.
Do we know the speaker's position on it?
I think the speaker would be supportive of the bill.
Was he
I don't
last
see any
time?
reason. It was assigned to Approps, but I was assigned to Approps the first year when we didn't have my committee, which is the Fiscal Responsibility Committee. It affects appropriation processes, so I mean it is appropriate that it would have been assigned to both my committee and appropriations. You know, just like, you know, if it's a school finance bill, then it goes to both education and Approps. So I don't think that it was any
Wouldn't appear
effort
that
on
he's
yeah, I don't think there's any
against
effort from leadership to try and kill the bill. And you know, and so you know, I think
Do you see any way that you would suggest that we could polish our presentation so that we could do better?
No, I thought that this was an excellent presentation. I thought we had a great presentation last year. Last year we had, like I mentioned, a professor from ASU come in and talk about activity-based costing and gave us some case examples. But you know, I thought that this was even better in the ability that it had to bring all that information together into a concise presentation, and you know, having that Harvard Business professor describe basically what this ASU professor had gone into, I thought was excellent. So I mean, we could do this again in my committee, and I'm sure we'll be able to pass it out of my committee, and then hopefully, I think the best strategy for the bill, I think number one, we could try to do something in the budget process to, maybe get something along these lines in one agency like CPS, but to get the bill passed, I think the best strategy would be to advocate for getting it assigned only to my committee, and then get it out of the House. Getting a vote in the House, I think, would be an advantage, no matter what happens over in the Senate. But then, perhaps we even get it out of the Senate, and it does get vetoed, and and that's okay too. That just adds to the number of people who understand the advantages of this bill, and then we try and get support of the next governor. All right.
Yeah, may I make a couple
Sure.
comments? I just want to say congratulations for being here and your efforts. I think it's wonderful. I've been out speaking and trying to get exactly this going, because I believe strongly that our country is in serious trouble. I don't know if we can fix things in Congress. Hopefully you can when you get there. But if not, we need to regroup and strengthen as a state. And so your citizen involvement, I believe, is the only answer to the problems we have in our country. Is for groups like yours to grow larger and then others to follow your example. My second point is timing is so important, understanding the system. So the studying you're doing is so vital to understand how laws are passed. Because if right now you contacted all 90 legislators, you'd basically be wasting your time. But you focus in on, we know it has to go through the Speaker of the House, and then it goes to the committee chairman and so forth. And so understanding the timing, as soon as you get a bill number, knowing exactly where it is. And then I wanted to mention that I'm on the JLAC committee, Joint Legislative Audit Committee, I think, which can be a great tool, because JLAC has subpoena power over any state agency.
Whoa, wow.
I'm on that committee. There's, I think, 8 members, and there's 5 of us who are very conservative. And so if citizen groups will get the information together and say, hey, we think you ought to look at this department, this area, because there's something very interesting going on there. In other words, specifics of where to look. And I think that's something to keep in mind. Campaign issues, just reiterating, contacting those gubernatorial candidates is an excellent idea. Get them committed, find out which ones will commit to support this idea and hold their feet to the fire. And then just to reiterate what has already been said, things take time. If we don't win it this session, I tell people it generally takes 3 years to get something through, and that's optimistic. Sometimes it takes 10 or 15 years. I saw some bills when I was here in the mid-90s that just got passed a couple years ago. And so it takes time. Now, but don't let that discourage you. Just the other thing I was going to say is you might, you probably already are, broaden your scope and not just work on one bill, but work on others. So if you have several going on, if you don't win one, you might win some others. And I want you to know that I'm with you, and I'm willing to work right alongside. And if we can get this bill to the Senate, I would very much like to help push it through. So whatever I can do, that is what we need, is citizen involvement. If you get things going and get excited, then that you can start a fire that will grow. And when you talk about grassroots, that's really our hope. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming down. All right, did anybody else have anything else before we adjourn? Tracy? Bill?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you guys for coming down.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you. You too. Thank you.